The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
All right, we got good news for you, baby. Thatcher Demko may be back, but the Canucks are still chasing goaltenders. What's going on?
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer since 2013, currently with a Daily Hive, Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks. You want to know why? Because it is your Canucks every damn day. We're part of that Locked On Podcast Network. They're doing the most for sports fans across the world. And for our show, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe, like on YouTube, and on the podcast platform, go leave a 5-star review and a comment. Maybe we even got a little incentive for that too, okay? Because I got a family to feed, baby. And you know what? I'm feeding my family because of you and you, but also because of the sponsors. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Go download, get that Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. The Vancouver Canucks. There's never a dull moment, okay? That's what we got to do this show, Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. Because even in August, there's always something to talk about. And right now, some more updates yesterday worth talking about, okay? Thatcher Demko, good news on that front. Good news on the Archer Shilov's front as well. But reports yesterday that Canucks are chasing Kevin Lankinen, Antti, Raanta. Interesting times in Vancouver here to get back into September. Again, hockey right around the corner. I'm also going to touch on the one big mistake that the Canucks need to avoid next season, especially to start the season. And it relates to the goaltending as well, just a little bit. Finally, as always, if there's some comments, we'll try to get them towards the end of the show. I'll also touch on Kyle Bowen, my co-host, who's not here today, and tell you the real reason why he's not able to be on this episode of Locked On Canucks. But let's get to the Demko news first and foremost, okay? Because as we talked about recently on a couple episodes of Locked On Canucks, the Thatcher Demko news, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. The fact that this guy had not skated since prior to Game 7 against Edmonton, the fact that this guy was going to miss training camp, the fact that this guy could potentially miss the start of the season due to the knee injury he suffered back in the spring after already injuring the same knee back in February of last season. Lots of bad news on that front. It had us all thinking about the injury history of Demko. What's his future in Vancouver? Is Shilov's ready? All these stressful questions. But at the end of the day, Thatcher Demko, one of the best goalies in the NHL. And we learned yesterday that Thatcher Demko, according to Rick Dhaliwal of Check TV, is back skating, baby. He's back. He's back on the ice. And that's good news for your Vancouver Canucks. And what did I say back in August, okay? We talked about the hypotheticals. We talked about the worst case scenario because we got to lay it out for you, right? And talk about what would happen if Demko is not available. But I also said, when news like that breaks in August, it is prime overreaction season. Now, you could say that him stepping back on the ice, in a way, could be a bit of an overreaction because is this the first time he's been on the ice since May? Has he not been on the ice all summer? What kind of shape is Thatcher Demko in right now? And we heard Jim Rutherford allude to it in the summer with one of his interviews on the Bob McCown podcast, that Thatcher Demko is a bit of a freak in terms of taking care of his body. And now you could read into that. Maybe he pushes himself too much. Maybe he's pushed himself too much to get back last season. And that was the reason that he re-injured his knee within, a week of returning to the Canucks lineup. But you could also look at it this way. You know, this guy is one of the best goalies on the planet. I'm sure he's got one of the best teams around him on the planet. I don't think this guy is getting bad advice in terms of how to take care of his body. But there is that healthy balance of resting, letting your body heal, but also being ready for the grind and the rigor of an NHL season. Not just any NHL season, but the first one in a long time where your Vancouver Canucks have legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations. Say that with me one more time because it feels good. This Canucks team has legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations. I think they might be a top 5 team in the NHL entering this season. And Thatcher Demko is a massive part of that. So again, we don't know exactly where he's at. We're going to find out in training camp pretty soon because, oh, by the way, Thatcher Demko, according to this report, not only is he back skating, but he's expected to be ready for Canucks training camp. And man, oh man, if you weren't already feeling good on a hump day, that's the news you wanted to hear, baby. Thatcher Demko, again, back on the ice, expected to be at Canucks training camp. Good news for your Vancouver Canucks because this is an important season, right? There's only not we know in this market, and I think every even casual fan knows this of any NHL team. It's not every year where your team enters the equation as being a Stanley Cup contender. And this is a foreign concept to a lot of Canucks fans. And, you know, you could argue this organization, this fan base has maybe lost a generation of fans to an extent because this team sucked. They sucked for a long time. I'm meeting kids around, you know, maybe 9, 10 years old nowadays. My friends' kids who are a bit older who are cheering for like Colorado and Pittsburgh, sometimes even the Edmonton Oilers. And that's a sad thing, man, because it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, man. A city that has a hardcore fan base. They deserve some happiness. We deserve that Stanley Cup, baby. So Thatcher Demko back on the ice, expected to be back at training camp. But what about Archer Shilovs, who may just be the most important guy on the Canucks this season? Not saying a lot. There's a lot of stars in this team. There's a lot of important guys, but regardless of Demko being back on the ice, it is abundantly clear that you need a backup netminder. You need a backup netminder to spell this guy and probably have 30-plus starts, right? You know, Demko was kind of pushing 60 starts in the last couple of seasons, injuries aside. He was on that pace. And we saw it kind of in January and February. Not a lot of trust into Smith. They kind of fed Demko 9 out of every 10 games. The Canucks can't do that this season. You can't do that. If you want to win a Stanley Cup, I'm sorry, no disrespect to Archer Shilovs, because I believe in the kid. But you want Thatcher Demko. You want the best goalie in the planet to be playing every game when the Stanley Cup playoffs roll around. And with Archer Shilovs, the update on him recently was that obviously he pulled out of the Olympic qualifiers for Latvia, or he was left off the roster, and we learned that he had knee inflammation. The translation from the Latvian outlet was that there was high risk of a chronic injury. So he was in Latvia receiving treatment. He's now returned to Vancouver. And again, the update on him yesterday was that he is expected to be at Canucks training camp as well. So Demko's back. Shilovs is going to be there. All is well in Canuck land. We'll see how that goes. Much like life, it's not a straightforward line at the top. There's going to be ebbs and flows. And we'll see how these guys look at training camp, right? And we'll see if the Canucks add another goaltender, because that was the other wrinkle yesterday. It's like Demko's coming back to training camp. Shilov's coming to training camp. You got that good-looking guy, Yuri Patera. He's part of the team. What do you need anyone else for? But apparently, the Canucks are still chasing another netminder. And 2 names that popped up yesterday, Kevin Lankinen and Antti Raanta. Let's touch on those reports on the other side after we shout out our friends over at Gametime. Hey, you know the deal, right? Hockey season is back. And tickets are available to see this Vancouver Canucks, who, again, have those legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations, okay? And if you're buying tickets for the Vancouver Canucks, or you want to treat your boo, you can get tickets on Gametime for concerts, comedy, theater, all that good stuff, okay? Hey, maybe your girl likes the NFL over the NHL. That's cool too, man. Go find those tickets, all of them on Gametime. The main reason, they got that lowest price guarantee, baby. You're not going to find cheaper tickets anywhere else. And Gametime, they're stepping up, man. They're leveling up. They're going from a Charmander to a Charizard here. And they got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets easier for your favorite live events. Gametime Picks, they filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching for thousands of tickets. When you download that app, come on, you get the views from your seat, you get the all-in pricing. And they got the lowest price guarantee, which means that Gametime will credit you with 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets on another app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Go download that Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime, mother. All right, I'm back here on Locked On Canucks. Your co-host, Trevor Beggs, riding solo today. And again, I'm going to get into why Kyle Bound is not on the show. There's a damn good reason for it, man. The guy's he's going through some stuff right now. We'll get into that to end off the episode. But right now, we got to talk about the reports from yesterday that the Canucks are after a couple of the veteran free agent netminders. And to be quite honest with you, probably the two biggest names out there. We've talked about both of them. We've talked about this guy more, Kevin Lankinen, okay? So Kevin Lankinen, again, it's very surprising that this guy's still in the free agent market. We talked about it. Top 10 save percentage at even strength last season. Really in limited minutes because Saros was the busiest starter in the league. Was really damn good for the Nashville Predators last season. It's quite honestly shocking to see him still on the free agent market. So with Kevin Lankinen, apparently, according to the dude himself, Rick Dhaliwal, the Canucks have offered Kevin Lankinen a contract for next season. And there was no reports about if it's a PTO or if it's a legitimate contract. But Dhaliwal did say that the Canucks continue to pursue UFA goaltender Kevin Lankinen. The club has made Lankinen an offer, but it's not good enough to get a deal done right now. But the pursuit of Lankinen continues, and we'll see where that ends up. Again, a pretty fascinating report considering the news from yesterday that Demko's skating. He's going to be at training camp. Shelovs is back in Vancouver. He's going to be at training camp. But again, you can understand the Canucks' perspective here because you got two netminders who, despite the potential, despite the fact that they are the most cost-efficient goaltending duo in the NHL in terms of being good. Like the Oilers have cheaper goaltending, but let's be real. Skinner and Picard versus Demko and Shelovs. I think you're taking Shelovs over Skinner. Yeah, I'm disrespecting the Edmonton Oilers, man. Unbelievable organization. And in a lot of ways, good and bad. Let's be real. But again, Demko and Shelovs, I think, in terms of bang for your buck, for my money, the best goaltending tandem in the NHL right now. Kyle's mentioned it before. There might be a little bit of Allmark Swayman energy between the two of them. You know, they have that potential. Not to say they're necessarily going to get there, but they have the potential to provide that kind of impact for your Vancouver Canucks. And if that happens with Quinn Hughes on your blue line and this forward group, the Canucks are going to be a damn scary team next season. But again, neither goaltender is 100% healthy, so you understand the rationale to chase a guy like Kevin Lankinen. And again, I think based on what he did last season, you're probably looking at a contract that's probably in the high $1 million range. I want to say that $1.7, $1.8 million range, something like that. And again, he's a guy that no one really wants to see this, but you theoretically could send Shelovs to the AHL. And I think it's good to have that insurance policy because we talked about it before. Yuri Patera, good-looking dude, but he does only have, 8 NHL games to his name, 6 last season, 2 the season before. And then fourth on the depth card is Nikita Tolopilo, the Belarusian. But man, oh man, he has 0 NHL games despite looking pretty good last season for your Abbotsford Canucks. Now, I just pulled the contract projection from AFP Analytics. I haven't checked this out since June prior to free agency. So AFP Analytics projected the deal for Kevin Lankinen based on his track record and mainly his performance last season to be a 2-year deal worth just a shade over $2 million a season. And that seems about right for Kevin Lankinen. Again, the Canucks got the cap space to do that if they LTIR Tucker Poolman. Will they do that is another story. Now, the cheaper route would be to chase the other guy that was mentioned in reports yesterday, and that was Antti Raanta. Antti Raanta, veteran netminder. Speaking of injuries, this guy has suffered a lot of them He has hardly been healthy through his NHL career, but when he's been in the net, he's been good. Again, only a career high of 47 starts in a single season. That was for the Arizona Coyotes back in 2017-18, so it's been a while. And the season since 2018-19, 12 games, 2019-20, 33, 12 in 2020, 2021, the shortened season, 28, 27, and 24, respectively, in the last 3 seasons with the Carolina Hurricanes. Good numbers really in all of those seasons, except for last season with the Carolina Hurricanes, where he had a ghastly .872 save percentage in the NHL, and in 8 AHL games had an .873 save percentage. So Antti Raanta, certainly towards the end of his career. But maybe he's got a little left in the tank. Who knows how his summer's gone? You know, all these guys have had the best summer ever. And even at 35 years old, it can happen, man. I'm in my 30s. I can't be hating on that. I want to have the best summer of my life at 35 years old, man. Come on. And there was interest. It was reported by Kevin Woodley back in June that Antti Ranta's camp had interest in joining the Vancouver Canucks. So between them signing Lankinen and bringing in Raanta to a PTO, obviously Lankinen is the sexier option. He was great last season. I think he could be great for the Vancouver Canucks, although it'll be interesting to see how he fits on that depth chart and what that does to Shilov's. But what I expect between these two options, if either one is going to come to fruition, will be the Canucks signing Antti Raanta to a PTO. Again, there didn't seem to be a ton of interest from the Canucks back in June, early July when this was reported. But based on what we know now, with Demko's health and Shilov's health, I think it makes sense for him to bring in another goaltender, and I wouldn't be surprised if Antti Raanta is that guy. Now, I want to touch on one thing quick, okay? Because with this goaltending drama, it might alter how the Canucks play, at least to start the season. And it would go against what Rick Tocchet said both in the spring and over the summer, where he talked about how the Canucks, or he felt regrets with how the Canucks played last season offensively. Maybe that the structure was a bit too tight and there wasn't enough offensive creativity there. Now, the Canucks were an incredibly efficient team, the highest shooting percentage in the NHL at even strength. Could be the highest shooting percentage overall. I'd have to double check that. But your Vancouver Canucks were, again, an incredibly efficient team offensively last season. But that is really hard to repeat. And we talked all about that PDO stuff, blah, blah, blah. And look, the Canucks, I believe, will be an above average team in terms of shooting percentage with the players they have on this team. But man, oh man, it's a hard thing to sustain in this league because even the best go through slumps. And, we saw what the Canucks stars last season. Of course, Pettersson went through a bit of a slump. But for the most part, guys were really punching above their weight last season, right? JT Miller, 100 points. Brock Besser, 40 goals. Think of some of the depth guys too. Nils Höglander, shooting almost 25% overall. Dakota Joshua, shooting over 20% last season. There was a lot of things that went right for this Canucks team offensively. And sure enough, last season, in all situations during the regular season, they tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning for the highest shooting percentage in the NHL, shooting 11.99%. I'm just saying that is damn hard to sustain. And with this Canucks team, I think Rick Tocchet does want to open things up offensively. He wants these guys to be more creative. And to be quite honest, he has to let this team be more creative. They have to find ways to create more offense. Whether that's beat a bit stronger on the boards, whether that's these guys scheming things up offensively. Really in the NHL, what you can have set plays off the face-off, but the rest of it is pretty hard to do, especially in a game as fast as the NHL. But this team needs to find ways to create more offense because, two things really scare me next season. Putting the goaltending help aside, and it's the depth on this defense, first and foremost, and regression. Because this Canucks team did not create enough of their own luck last season. And I was digging back into it prior to hopping on here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. Like and subscribe. Do us a solid. Love you a long time. Your Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs. We all know it. They barely got the puck on net. They averaged a shade over 20 shots per game. And I dug back about 10 years, the 10 years prior. No team was even close to the Vancouver Canucks. I believe the lowest number I saw was the Florida Panthers in 2019-20. They averaged 23 shots a game. The Vancouver Canucks barely got the puck on net in the playoffs. And it was a similar story in the regular season. They were a bottom 5 team in terms of shots on net, especially in the second half of the season. They were one of the lowest shooting teams in the NHL, down there with some of the worst teams in the league. The Canucks need to create more of their own luck next season. And my concern is, with Demko on 100%, maybe you got to play Shilovs more. Maybe Patera gets some games. Maybe it's Lankinen and Raanta. Who knows? There is a lot of uncertainty despite the good news we got today about Demko and Shilovs. But I think if there's uncertainty in net, the tendency is to rely on your structure, play tighter defensively. And the cost of that is limiting some of that offensive creativity. The Vancouver Canucks are going to be hard-pressed to score at the rate they did last season if they shoot the puck as little as they did in the regular season and the playoffs. This team needs to find ways to be more creative offensively. And I think trying to limit that creativity based on the potential goaltending situation and the uncertainty there could be the biggest mistake the Canucks make in 2024-25. They need to open things up. They need to let the stars play. They need to rely on their speed, their forechecking. They need to get more pucks on net. Maybe get some greasier goals as well. This is a team that likes to rely on their skill. There are ways to open things up offensively. There's ways to be creative, even if it's not quite as sexy as some goals we see out there. But the Canucks need to find ways to get more than 20 shots on net a game because they are not going to win a lot of games, especially in the postseason, if they shoot that little. Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. Hit us up in the comments. What is the biggest mistake the Canucks can make next season? And are you worried about the Canucks offensively at all? Seems weird to say. They scored a lot of goals last season. But February, March, April, May were not banner months for the Canucks in terms of goals or shots on net. On the other side, we'll get to a few of your comments, and I'll tell you the real reason why Kyle Bowen isn't on the show today. That's all coming up on the other side. Again, you're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. And you know what? I'm usually joined by my co-host, my brother, Kyle Bowen, my twin. People tell us we look alike. And there's a good reason why he's not on the show today, okay? Kyle Bowen, he suffered a bit of an incident, man. And I feel for him, man. I really do. So we had this guy leave a comment here on a podcast platform. Say, Kyle Bowen, get a voice box translate. You picked the wrong field of work, bro. You constantly sound like you have a mouthful of helium. Please spare us and retire from podcasting. And Kyle, he took this to heart. Man, oh man. I was calling Kyle yesterday, and I think he hit FaceTime by accident. I see this guy punching himself in the throat repeatedly, violently. And the last thing he said before he hung up on me is that he's getting vocal reconstruction surgery. And that grinds my gears, man. You know what? When you're going live on YouTube, when you're recording a podcast, you get some hate, right? My skin, it's pretty thick, man. You can take hate my way. You can make fun of my eyebrows, make fun of my mumbling, fast-talking voice. Make fun of me for whatever you want, man. I'm not too worried about that. But when people make fun of my brothers, and a guy who, in my mind, is one of the most talented guys behind the mic that I know. And that voice, man, you want to know why I do that Locked On Canucks? Kyle Bowen's voice. Makes me rock hard, man. So here's the thing. I want Kyle Bowen back on the show. I don't want him to get vocal reconstruction surgery because I love his voice. So here's what we need. We need some more 5-star reviews, man. We got families to feed. Kyle's got to take his girl to Cactus Club. So if you're listening on a podcast platform, we'd appreciate the hell out of it if you left us a 5-star review and told us that Kyle's voice turns you on. Or just leave a sick comment, man. We do want to start, dishing out some shirts, maybe selling some shirts here in the fall. And if there's a comment that really catches our eye and a 5-star review attached to it, we'll knock $5 off a shirt for you. Maybe we'll just send you the shirt, man. Just depends how we're feeling. But, Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. We want to keep growing this thing, baby, because we love it. We love talking to you every damn day. And if we get buried because of 1-star reviews, because of that jerk, yeah, we ain't going to be around too long, man. So let's get to a couple of your comments before we get out of here. Someone saying that, morning, Beggsy. Thanks for bringing the good news. It's my pleasure, man. You know what? Kyle and I came on Locked On Canucks at a weird time. For those who don't know, we joined the show in March of 2023. That was the day the Canucks, March 1st, 2023, the day the Canucks traded for Filip Hronek. And it was an interesting time to start the show because, again, this team's been bad for a long time. They'd missed the playoffs for, I guess that was their 3rd year in a row after the bubble run. And, Kyle and I had been doing this on other platforms for a long time. We've been used to talking about the negativity. We've been accustomed to it. I say off the top, I've been writing about this team since 2013. My first year writing about this team was the torts year. Maybe I'm the curse, man. In my, pushing a decade of writing, podcasting with this team on different platforms. I've been around for 3 playoff runs? 1 in a bubble in Edmonton. And the other in 2014-15, I didn't even have chest hair back then. Unbelievable stuff. So your Vancouver Canucks are good again, and I love it, man. And I'm always happy to bring good news. Kurt Richardson saying our power play should be much better as well. When I'm talking about the offense, talking about the creativity, that's something I do want to touch on here in September as well. What needs to happen for the Canucks power play to be one of the best in the NHL? Because they got the potential to do it. And for whatever reason last year, for a myriad of reasons, it wasn't effective. And it actually kind of cost them the playoffs as well. We talk about going to Game 7, this being a game of inches. Kyle and I talked about that this week. If they had a power play that was humming, they beat the Edmonton Oilers in that series. SK93 in the comments saying, the biggest mistake this offseason is not upgrading the defense. And I think SK makes a damn good point. I was saying the biggest mistake the Canucks could make next season is hampering that offensive creativity because they're worried about the goaltending. They're worried about the health of their netminders. But the biggest mistake this offseason, I think SK is probably right. It is probably not upgrading the defense because on paper, it's not a great blue line. You are really relying a lot on Adam Foote and what he can do to fix this defense and make it better than it is on paper. Mother Knucker basically saying the same thing in the comments. Biggest mistake is to rest on the current decor while not upgrading via trade or PTO. Again, here's the other thing I'll say. Patrick Allvin, I believe he's going to make a move sometime this season to upgrade the defense. It's one of those situations where I think they want to see what they have on the blue line right now. But you can't tell me that Rutherford and Allvin, 2 smart dudes, don't have their own reservations about this blue line. You can't tell me that they're enthralled with Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers being the second pair. No offense to those guys. They play a role. But are either of them top 4 defensemen? I'm not quite sure. And Derek Forbin and Vinny Desharnais, based on the players we know, certainly aren't those guys either. Your Vancouver Canucks, they'll guarantee to keep things dramatic and exciting. And we'll try to do the same here on Locked On Canucks, your team every damn day. Shout out to you and you and you, whether you're an everyday or an occasional listener, first-time listener, a new subscriber, or you join us on the live show here on YouTube, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening. We appreciate the hell out of you for listening to Locked On Canucks. On YouTube, give it a subscribe, like the video, helps us grow this thing and keep talking to you, your team every day for eternity. And on the podcast side, if you leave a 5-star review and a funny comment, or you say Kyle's voice turns you on, I'll come to your house and give you a smooch, man. Unbelievable stuff. I got to get out of here, but coming up this week, I want to talk about a few things. We'll see if it's this week or next week, but which prospects on this team could potentially surprise next season? How does the power play get better? And let's talk about a guy on the Canucks who has the toughest job in the NHL. Those are 3 topics on my mind coming up on another episode of Locked On Canucks. But for now, we got to get out of here. Again, I'm Trevor Beggs. Shout out to Kyle Bowen. And you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.